This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
And video recording is on.
Which then means that I must give you a synchronizing clap.
Appreciate it.
TC Traveler, you're not an hour late. You completed an entire chapter in an hour. Exactly.
In a lot of ways, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. But now we are here to record a normal length chapter. Well, it's going to be a double header. We are doing 2 chapters in this episode, but it will be a normal length recording, not the trollishly short one.
What are you talking about?
You're right. Edit that out. I'm not saying anything.
We're not saying anything about that.
I fucking jinxed myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, we're not going to say anything. First thing you do, say something.
Do I look like I smoke a lot of weed?
Right now? A little bit. Like, do I look like I smoke a lot of weed?
And then Fire Phoenix has correctly diagnosed the problem. There's too much of the brown nausea coming through. I just got totally distracted. And this is why I couldn't actually be Varen. I would actually fucking forget. And
Truly a member of the Green Aja.
I prefer to go on sabbatical in the 2 rivers. That's all.
Okay, so let's do our standard. Let's see, we're recording this. We got a couple of things about the show over the last couple of days. We
did.
The poster, the puzzle poster, of which we got the most important piece, which was Lan's leg where it touched Moraine. So we got a piece of her cloak and his like vertical leg.
Yeah, we got both of them in our puzzle piece. So we're basically the coolest. We got the best piece.
Yeah, definitely the best piece. And that was sent to us by, I woke up at like 7:30 a.m. to a text message or from a DM on Twitter from the official Wheel of Time thing with a puzzle piece and a bit of a poem with it. And I was immediately retweeted it and then went back to sleep. Talked to a radio briefly.
Yeah, I was like, is this a thing? He's like, yes. I'm like, are you going to do the retweets? He's like, yes. Okay, cool. I don't, is Twitter thing? I don't Twitter. I very erratically Twitter.
But it was fun to see everybody scramble and put the pieces together and try and assemble the poster and then get the actual poster that was Moraine dragging what appears to be a dead Trolloc by the hair.
Which is just like so badass.
It's real badass.
It's like, so they're establishing her as a warrior mage, like without a doubt. Lan's back there like, should I get my sword out or do you got this?
She's like, nah, I'm good. You're good. Really good poster. And then we got a sort of extensive little clip narrated by Moraine. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did. That with the shadow spawn. The whole like more of a look at the shadow spawn, which was mostly just fast cut editing, but still it was more monster shots.
And it was mostly shots we've already seen, but extended, right? Like we'd seen a picture of the Forsaken with the Trollocs behind it, but this was like 5 seconds of that shot of them moving around in,
It's been very cool how they've given us just the same moments over and over again, and they're just extending it out by a little bit. And like, I see them doing it and I'm a little resentful that we're not getting more, but I also think it's kind of brilliant because it's just so addictively exciting to be like, oh, I got an extra 30 or an extra 0.3 seconds. It's like, yes, they're playing us like fish.
I get the feeling
fish fiddles.
I get the feeling we'll know a lot of what's going on in episode 1 by the time it drops.
Agreed. We're going to have seen most of it already.
But very little beyond that. And since we're seeing 3 episodes in one night, that's not going to be a big... I'm excited about that. So
basically episode 1 is the teaser trailer and they're just giving to us in little dribbles. And it's working for me. I'm excited. Some stuff excites me more than others, but I'm still overall beyond over the moon excited about everything like that. We're only like a month away.
And the nice thing is now, I mean, I don't have enough credit with my friends to force them to read Wheel of Time, but I do have enough credit with my friends to force them to watch it. So I can't wait until I get to that point.
Nice.
God, I can't believe the finale is Christmas Eve. I'm going to be like with my parents. I don't know what the hell I'm going to... I guess I'm just going to force my whole family to watch the whole show that day so we can watch the finale.
Best of luck with that.
We'll see. The kids should be old enough now. I don't know. They've got to be 14, 16, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I should know my niece and nephew's ages.
You should.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Haven't seen them in 10 years.
That is a decent excuse.
Yeah.
But should we do the chapter?
Yeah, let's do A Quiet Place. So,
A Quiet Place and then The Breaking Storm.
And The Breaking Storm. Yes, so The Quiet Place has the Dark Friend faces, which doesn't seem obvious at first until you realize Kareen is a Dark Friend and does that whole hood thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she causes chaos.
Yep. And I really do think that is a clue. That icon is supposed to be a clue that there's Dark Friends doing stuff in this chapter, because that's the only clue I think we get.
Yeah, I agree. And I would summarize this chapter as being terror, torture, and terrangrial. That is this chapter. Because we have the terror of the kin running around.
Sure.
We have the torture of Ispan by Adelius and Vandine. And we have Elaine sorting out terrangrial. And getting a lot, not just sorting them up, but getting a lot of the ones that we see come into play later in the plot. This isn't just her sorting, this is her finding things that cosplayers will be making for years to come.
TTT.
Like what's behind you.
Yes,
for
what's
example.
behind me. Right, yeah. It's like 3 crosses set up next to each other.
Not what I was going for, but okay.
Don't know why my mind went there, but yeah. You said terror, torture, and terrangrial, and I went TTT, and I pictured it, and I saw 3 crosses on a hill, and my mind went to Jesus. Don't know why. Anyway, moving on. A Quiet Place, which is what they're hoping the farm is going to be, and it's really not because of all the chaos. It's almost an ironic chapter. Yeah.
It's what the farm has been.
Mm-hmm.
It is not what the farm will be in the future as of this moment.
Would you like to read us in?
Sure. I'm going to have to drink some water though. Just the first paragraph or farther in? I guess the first 2 paragraphs.
First 2 I think is a good one. Yeah. Give us a picture of where we're heading.
The kin's farm lay in a broad hollow surrounded by 3 low hills, a sprawling affair of more than a dozen large, white-plastered buildings with flat roofs, gleaming in the sun. 4 great barns were built right into the slope of the highest hill, a flat-topped thing with one side that fell away in steep cliffs beyond the barns. A few tall trees that had not lost all of their leaves provided a modicum of shade in the farmyard. To the north and east, olive groves marched away and even up the sides of the hills. A sort of slow bustle enveloped the farm, with easily over 100 people in evidence despite the afternoon heat, carrying on all the everyday tasks, but none quickly. It might almost have passed for a small village instead of a farm, except that there was not a man or a child to be seen. Elaine did not expect any. This was a waypoint for kinswomen passing through Ebudar to elsewhere, so there would not be too many in the city itself at one time. But that was a secret matter, as secret as the kin themselves. Publicly, this farm was known for 200 miles or more as a retreat for women, a place for contemplation and escape from the cares of the world for a time, a few days, a week, sometimes longer. Elaine could almost feel serenity in the air. She might have regretted bringing the world into this quiet place, except that she also brought new hope. So that's the quiet place, is this place that she's disturbing.
Gives us a nice little... It's funny, for such an important place, we're actually only here for a very short period of time.
Yeah, for a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pivotal place, but it's a very brief moment. But it takes 2 chapters. Actually, it takes 3 chapters, I think, for them to get fully out of there. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
It's in the timeline, it's only like an afternoon, basically late morning through mid-afternoon.
So we run into Elise, who is sort of the one who runs the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not sure. There's a lot of butting heads. She's sort of in charge of stuff, but again, as with all the kin, there's just sort of this. She is of the kin, and I don't really know how to sort her personality out from the other individuals, other than like she's the one who butts heads with Nynaeve frequently.
She is like a foil for Nynaeve, I think is the like literary term for that, because she does butt heads with Nynaeve and she does stand out
Right.
from the kin for the fact that she's actually like on a level with Nynaeve, only way better at it. She's basically a wise one. She's kind of the
Gotcha.
Soralia of the kin, right? Like every group of channelers has to have that one woman.
Gotcha. The one who's like takes charge and makes everybody else who's also strong-willed fall into line. So she must be super strong-willed on another level. Right. The
Yeah.
Suan. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So Elise is that for the kin because everyone else has been like a shrinking flower, like all that kind of thing. And I'm being told that my use of the term foil is correct from someone who knows these things. So thank you, Fire Phoenix, with the English major. I believe you have an English major. And good, I got that right. Yay. Edit that so I sound like I know what my friends' stories are. Um, so yeah, that's basically Elise's role, and we're being introduced to her, and it's important if you enjoy watching that kind of sparring. That's about all there is to say about her. Her story isn't particularly interesting. She just provides a necessary function in the. She creates some physical comedy in this with her interactions with the sea folk. There's a lot of physical comedy that kind of breaks up the intensity of some stuff.
The where's my hat? Here's your hat. Like that sort of.
The squawk like a startled goose when she
Yeah.
like puts a noble woman into the barn to
Mhm.
be quiet and stay out of the way. Like there's levity there, and she provides a really nice antagonist against Rianne in terms of debating the future of the kin,
Gotcha.
because Rianne is really excited to like go back. You know, she's got Elaine's kind of enthusiasm for the tower, and Rianne is more like Nynaeve. She's like Nynaeve in
Right.
that she's like, what do you really want to be involved? Is the tower going to give you a choice? Like, and so Elise gives voice to that side of the argument. So the kin aren't all just automatons following after this idealism. There's actually a discussion happening.
Well, you also see it. Elise is, from her point of view, already pretty much on the top of the heap, right? She's the most powerful of the kin, right? So they do what she says. Why would she want to join another power structure where she's got to start over and work her way up? Like that's a whole like, from a personal perspective, dude. Why do I want to join the White Tower? I'd just be another apprentice when I'm the master and commander of everyone here. Like no, I'm not giving that up.
Yeah. You want me to be a perpetual novice when I have freedom as an adult ass woman? Like, no. So, yeah, Elise provides a lot of important narrative functions, but she doesn't have an interesting backstory, particularly. She doesn't like turn out to be a dark friend or like save anyone in an epic way or die in an epic way. She's
Or have
just
any role in the last battle whatsoever besides the general kin healing group.
which is important,
Yes.
but yeah, she's not a thrilling character. She's just an important literary device character.
And so as they're writing up, it looks like this weird group of women until we get the dark friend Karine leaving her hood too far back in a very
Just
dark
framing her
friend. Yeah,
face.
just perfectly.
She's like, I tried to pull it up far enough. Oops.
So that's the trick. That's how you know she's a dark friend. And if you're paying attention, yeah, he drops a lot of hints about that along the way. If you can keep all these characters straight, which we have trouble.
Nobody
Yeah,
can.
nobody can. But yeah, there's that investigation of Vandine and Adelius, and we see a lot of them in this. And really, this is what leads to their deaths, right? Because Vandine and Adelius are the ones who take control of Ispan, and then because they're the ones in control, one of them gets murdered.
Yep. When they take control of this, they sign one of their death warrants, which it's the way that their relationship works, it's basically a death warrant for both of them because they are like warders,
Right.
because they're literal sisters.
And do you remember the mnemonic device I used to keep them straight?
Vandine is a green.
Vandine is a green, and so she doesn't die because she's got the warders.
And so she doesn't die because she's got the warders. Yeah, I forgot the second part.
Yeah.
I just remember the mnemonic part.
Because the Dark Friend doesn't want to kill, because the warders would have tipped him off. And they speculate that's why she survived. They waited, or they, knocked her unconscious and killed her sister?
No, she just wasn't there.
She just wasn't there. They waited. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So the women all scatter like hens when a fox is in the coop. Like it's just absolute chaos. And then Nynaeve is just making it worse.
I love her reaction. Stop them. The last thing we want is a panic. Send the warders. Like,
send men on horseback in armor after
go run them down. We don't want to panic.
It's so
oh, God,
like
Nynaeve.
it's
Jesus.
hilarious.
Yeah. And I love Lan's response with a nod that seemed to be a shake of his head.
He started to shake of his head like, yes, honey.
It's not going to be a good thing. Lan raised a questioning eyebrow, and we all know, I mean, he does not make much of an expression. So to raise a whole questioning eyebrow, that's like Lan basically being like, what the fuck are you doing, woman? Like, are you kidding me?
Exactly. But he's Lan, so he goes and does it. He's like, she knows that I disapprove. It's fine.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. But then
the interaction between those two in these chapters is just such a fun background. You know, when people say Jordan doesn't build relationships well, I'm like, go reread this stuff with Lan and Nynaeve after they get back together.
So cute. Yeah, it's great. But Elise does not run around in a panicked fashion. Elise decides to tear Rianne a new one. Be like, I swear to the light, I will beat you. I will call you out. How dare you sell us out? Like, she just goes off on Rianne. Rianne's like, I can explain. Rianne's like, I don't want to fucking hear it.
But Brianne has a good point. They already know, right? Like, how am I not? I'm not keeping a secret when they come to me and like, so we know who you are. We know what you've been doing. It's not like I didn't tell them anything. They came to me.
But Rianne doesn't get a chance.
No,
Elise does not give her a chance at all. And then until the Aes Sedai are like, no, you should listen. And then Elise is like, well, fuck everything. Like, Elise is very stymied by this because she does not want to be told that she's not good enough again.
Yeah. Well, what will we go back for? To be told again we aren't strong enough and to be sent on our way? Or will they just keep us as novices for the rest of our lives? Some might accept that, but I won't. What for, Rianne? What for? And like, that's a legitimate question because I don't think it's one that Egwene has answered. She's like, I want you back as part of the tower, but she hasn't figured out what the kin are going to be until we talk about them retiring into the kin and possibly as healers. You know, essentially, I think of the kin as what the yellow Ajah should have been.
Basically.
Yeah. With
a hint of the gray because they can help with traveling. And the gray, honestly, would be great travelers because they're diplomats. Like, they've got frequent flyer miles. You know?
It would seem that the gray should be in control of. I mean, we can spec. I think we've done that before, but like, what are the Ajahs going to be in the new age?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but,
like the gray is the traveling one, the yellow is an actual like healing network, all that sort of stuff. The red is the ambassadors to the man who can channel.
For sure.
The green to hunt down the remnants of the Trollocs. But yeah, it's.
And the next thing I have is Nynaeve just being like one of those people like where she's so strong she doesn't understand what it's like to be weak. Because she's like, I don't understand why you have to be a certain strength if you can pass the full tests. Like, I don't see what strength matters, says the strongest person in the room.
There's some of that, yeah, but it's also legit.
Yeah, it's a legit complaint, but coming from her in her bullish, bullying, not reading the room sort of way, it's like, you should sit down and shut up.
There is a little bit of that, but yeah. But also, like, you need... what was the quote when I was, I think it was Russell Brand, when I was poor and I complained about wealth inequality, they told me I was jealous. When I was rich and complained about wealth inequality, they told me I was, I didn't have standing or something like that, basically. And it's like, just because she's powerful, it doesn't mean her point about power shouldn't matter isn't valid.
Yeah.
And in
But
a lot of ways, she has to be powerful to change the status quo.
For sure. But there's a little bit of like, of all people to say that. Yeah. And also, like, she almost gets killed in the fool tests. She's totally writing them off. And it's like, Nynaeve, you're going to lose your braid to those fool tests. Like, don't sneer at them so hard. They're going to kick your ass.
The losing of the braid is so symbolic to me in terms of her, like, growing up and losing the braid, right? Like, in a lot of ways, I think Egwene grows up faster, and her losing her braid faster is a representation of that, and the fact that Nynaeve holds on to hers, which is sort of a representation of the two rivers and being. I know it's supposed to represent being an adult in the two rivers, but I feel like out in the real world, it represents the opposite of, like, holding on to your childhood and your habits from the village you came from, which don't matter anymore and shouldn't bind you and shouldn't force you to braid your hair.
Right. Well, especially with her. I mean, the fact that she literally clings to it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, she literally clings to her home.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I totally agree that their hair mirrors their maturity journey. I do hate though that there's that element of like she changes her hair and then she's an adult. Kind of like hate the visuals of that, but
I mean, Perrin does it too. He changes his beard and that's how he becomes an adult, right? Like
he grows a beard.
Yeah, but it's still a hair change, right? Like that's
yeah.
It's not gendered. I don't think. I think it's just a representation of, like, how often do you see that? I'm even thinking of The Last Airbender when we see, like.
I'm not familiar enough.
I know you're not, but when we see Aang, like, shave his head after taking a break and he grows his hair.
But it's forced on her. She doesn't choose to do it. Both the examples you're citing are where a man chooses to change his hair. And it's like that I'm fine with, but the whole concept of like losing it violently, it's I don't know. I don't like the visuals of it, but
fair.
It's a really, to have her lose her braid, it's like a character dying.
Right.
Which there's not enough of in the series. So I did appreciate it for giving me that, like, oh no, we've lost a favorite character.
But I do think there's something to be said for going through the actual Aes Sedai testing and how that affects her and how that changes her, right? It is something that does change her. So,
it's a visible scar.
It's a visible scar of that change.
Especially it's just escalating. You need something very obvious to remind you of what she's been through. And the loss of her braid is like.
So maybe a closer analogy wouldn't be Perrin growing his beard so much as Matt losing an eye.
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
Very. I mean, technically he consents to it, but only because the world is on the line.
Exactly. Like... Yeah. That's not really consent. That's
not really.
It's consent at the point of a gun. You can't sign a contract at the point of a gun type situation.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, just the violent removal of something that is, sacred to you and really isn't recoverable.
Her hair is more recoverable than his eye.
Yeah, on some level, but on another level, like, if you think it's long enough and dense enough, it could have taken her whole life to grow it out, and it's one of those things where, like, there's no real way to grow it out in a reasonable amount of time again. Like,
we don't. Yeah, for sure. We should continue on with the book.
Yes.
Elise doesn't believe that they're Aes Sedai until the other Aes Sedai say they are, which pisses them off. And then if there are 20 sea folk this far from the sea, I'll believe anything.
Yeah. And then there's one of my favorite interactions with the sea folk, which is go ahead and heal them if they ask politely. And then later in the chapter, they're all still hurting.
Yeah.
Which means none of them ask politely. Yeah, and there's just that one of those little subtle, like, you see it in 3 points where she goes, they may ask for healing, and she goes, go ahead and heal them if they ask nicely, and then later.
Yeah, no.
Nope.
It's great. And then Elise takes charge of Nynaeve, and they go off
Or
and start
vice
having their
versa.
little foil thing. And then the second that Elaine's back is turned, Ispan is where everyone wants her, which is with the Aes Sedai rather than the kin.
How did they pull that off? Was it just like give her to us?
Yeah, because over the entire last chapter that we basically skipped, they were both arguing. Over the entire last chapter, that was the entire argument, was each side taking their turns going to her and saying, we want her. So they both know that the other wants the same thing, right? Like
Right.
the second that Elaine's back was turned, everyone was like, we're making this swap.
I think it's funny. We spent that whole chapter arguing back and forth, and it in the end doesn't matter because they go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Which of course sets up the death of Vandine and Adelius.
Right. First Adelius and then Vandine.
Basically, yeah. Good job. You guys killed yourselves. Probably shouldn't have taken that task on.
But like, I mean, at the same time, who else in their minds is better qualified to interrogate a Black Aja sister than themselves? They're like, we're the oldest, most badass Aes Sedai in this group. It has to be us.
Yeah, and all that valuable knowledge that they got out of her really paid off, didn't it? I'm so glad that they took that over because they really.
That's the really frustrating part.
They got nothing. Nothing. There was no point. She's sworn an oath not to betray, right? We all know that. Like we read the text, right? Like,
they learn that there's oaths from the Dark One. Ooh, such a shock. Like, come on. You knew that there were going to be dark oaths. That was not enough knowledge to have two Aes Sedai and one warder die?
At least, yeah.
Yeah, it's just so they were such good characters and they just died in the most pointless, stupid thing. But yeah, that's what we're setting up next is when Elaine and Avienda are like, we can do the tortures. And Adelius and Vandine are like, you sweet summer children. No, you can't. Get out of here. And then Elaine's like, oh my God, wow. And Avienda's like, yeah, I just don't know how to torture. So
there's a line here where there's the two white-haired sisters have linked and are shielding Ispan. And she says, not even one of the Forsaken could have broken it. And I'm like, that can't be true, right? Rand was shielded actively by 3 linked women, plus the rest. Well, I guess he broke through the rest of the knots, but he was actively shielded by 3 women when he broke through and stilled them in the box. And the Forsaken are, at least many of the Forsaken are very close to as powerful as he is. So maybe no female Forsaken, but certainly the male Forsaken cannot be shielded by only 2 Aes Sedai.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's probably one of those things of hubris where they just don't quite understand how it works at the higher levels because that's not really a thing that they have to deal with. So they just assume that they know what's going on and then they don't actually know.
They just don't get the power level that the Forsaken are actually at. But
yeah,
it's just one of those things. It just seems one of those like statements that's like, if you really thought about that, it's not technically true.
Yeah, it's not, but they believe it to be true.
It's one of those things that like not even an elephant could break it if they sat on it. And it's like, well, yeah, no, probably if an elephant actually sat on my computer, it would break.
Yeah,
it's one of those things. Like maybe it's a hyperbolic statement more than anything else. But I highlighted that and I was like, that seems blatantly wrong to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a couple things highlighted here. There's the saying from their father reminding us that they're blood sisters. It's better to be sure than to weep later. They're so careful and they have so much history and then they die because they do this thing. And then there's this other line. Once the White Tower touched you, it was never finished.
Yeah.
There is no getting away. They say that it's not done with you until it's done with you, but they're never done with you. It's just like the White Tower is a very insidious institution. I can see why some women maybe don't want to just leap straight into it. Makes sense. So then we get this description about exactly how interrogation has to work according to
Yeah.
Tower Law.
Yeah,
That's
just
interesting.
it is interesting. Before the session begins, healing had to be given, and then the questioning started after sunrise. It had to end before sundown. If after sunset, then before sunrise, which is basically like you had 12 hours, and you got to
Mm-hmm.
heal them, max.
Mm-hmm.
You can't break any bones. You can't shed their blood. You can't basically torture people.
And you can't use Sayadar
Hmm.
on initiates of the tower.
But on
Like,
non-initiates, you can, which is
but on
interesting.
non-initiates you can.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it seems to me like this rule gets broken a lot.
because it's all in their heads. And this is more of a rule, less of this is a tower
It's
rule,
not an
not an
oath,
oath.
right?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where.
And it's like the rules gets broken a lot, partially because order is breaking down
Hmm.
at this time in the narrative. Perhaps that was less common 100 years ago, but yeah, it's I always wonder what exactly it is that Adelius and Van Dien do to Isfan. It's definitely a figs and mice sort of writing technique where it's like he just doesn't tell you and you have to imagine it and produce it.
Hmm.
And you're like, I need to stop thinking about this because I don't even want to know what my imagination is going to do next.
Oh, I did want to jump back a little bit to a line that she's thinking about the ageless face, and she says, "Oh, what she would not give to have the ageless face already." That tweaked a thread in the back of her thoughts, but it vanished as soon as she tried to examine it. Well, she's just encountered a whole group of channelers who are quite old, and not a single one of them has the ageless face. So
Mm-hmm.
something about that has got to be like, wait, why don't any of these people have an ageless face? Something in her mind is saying that, even though she can't bring that to consciousness yet.
She's picking up on what leads to the oath rod
Hmm.
discussion.
Definitely. And they're questioning Ispan right now because she's been on drugged with fork root and it's starting to wear off. So Ispan is sort of conscious and awake. So before they douse her again, basically, they're like, "This is the time to ask her questions."
Yeah. And Elaine marches up and is like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, hi, I'm going to commit war crimes. I'll just submit myself for penance after." It's like the way that she goes from not knowing what's happening to being like, "Please leave so that I can inexpertly torture
Hmm.
this woman," is just like, Elaine, could you please stop and think about something for once? Could you please think through what you are doing? Because that makes no sense. This makes no sense. You are not qualified.
We should talk.
Aside from the fact that torture doesn't get accurate answers.
Right? Yeah. We
Aside
can.
from that.
Let's not even bring that up. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about the morality of like, is torture like? It doesn't seem like this torture is worth it. You don't get any decent information. It's like, and those rules are in place for a reason, right? Because like you're better off befriending somebody to try and convince them to give you information than torturing them, right?
Yeah.
Like,
They're probably using like intimidation weaves or something.
yeah.
Like they're probably staying within tower law rules, but like the entire thing where Elaine thinks that her and Avienda can just physically torture the woman. It's just like, no, stop. Stop thinking that.
I mean, there is a certain the oath is relaxed a little bit because she is a dark friend, and there is like you can use the power as a weapon against a dark friend if you know they're a dark friend. So
Yeah.
there's a certain amount of relaxing of rules, and I could see someone convincing themselves, well, since we know they're Black Aja, they're not technically an initiate of the tower anymore.
No, they are still,
Well, yeah.
according to the way that the Aes Sedai see it, like they see them
Hmm.
as a betraying initiate of the tower. So but Elaine's just like leaping right through all this and just being like, I can just decide this and no one's
Hmm.
going to question me. And she's got these quotes from her mother and Lainey where it's like, oh, if you pay the price and you can do whatever you want. It's just like,
Even a queen isn't above the law.
which I mean, if they're, I agree that you should probably obey the rules of the nation you're ruling.
Right.
The world would probably be a better place if our rulers had to follow the rules that the rest of us do.
You'd think.
The world would probably be run a bit differently if they were actually held to the same rules that we were.
I was. What's the quote? If a fine, if there's a fee for breaking the law, then that law only exists for poor people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've a pay to play judiciary.
Anyway,
Moving on.
there is one little echo of Game of Thrones here, which is when what you order done, you must be willing to do with your own hand. As queen, what you order done, you have done, right? And there's a little bit of Stark in that, where he cuts off the
Yeah.
guy's head himself. It's
Yeah.
basically like, if you're gonna order an execution, be ready to cut off the guy's head yourself. I don't remember the exact quote, but there's a sort of a
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Being a good king is all about like being in charge and being willing to take action yourself. On some level, yes, but at the same time, it's like, I want to order an engineer to build a bridge for me. I probably, as king, shouldn't build that bridge myself, right? Like, there's a certain
Right.
amount of skilled work labor that goes into it. That's like not a willingness, but a skill.
That's something that Nathaniel thinks about in the prologue.
Mm.
Is like she is not going to attempt to do what any soldier can do. She's not going to learn how to use a sword because that's what soldiers do. She's going to learn how to rule a country because that's her job.
Elaine definitely doesn't think that, because she runs into a battle with a sword.
Well, in fairness, it's the actual end of everything. So,
There is that, but yeah,
she wasn't doing it before. But yeah, it's Elaine has a hard time learning that lesson, and Nathaniel really has internalized that and gives us that in the prologue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's what I found with this series is that Jordan often has a theme to each book, and and I feel like this book we're really talking about, whereas the last book really delved into consent. This one really talks about the responsibility of power. Everything from using the Bowl of the Winds and this conversation that we're having now, to Rand and Kalendor and the way he goes rogue and actually accidentally kills his own army, which is a big part of this thing.
Mm-hmm. Having too much power, how can it go wrong?
Right. That like, all of a sudden our characters that we've seen be these nobodies are really big and in charge. We've seen our main characters, our former queens, our former Amerlin seats humbled, and we have these inexperienced characters rising up with power for the first time, making mistakes, trying out torture for the first time, trying out leading an army for the first time. And this book is all about what's gonna go wrong.
Mm-hmm. I like that. That is a theme we will look out for, as it undoubtedly pops up again and again throughout the book.
Power gone wrong. Power gone wild. Woo!
So then
show us your Angreal.
Yes. So then silent glances pass between Vandine and Elise in the manner of people who had spent so much time together they hardly needed to speak aloud any longer, which I like, because it just I mean, it breaks your heart a little more when they die, but like that's how close they are. Like they're almost water bonded to each other. They really are. They can almost read each other's minds. They can almost tell where each other are. They really can't exist if the other dies.
Well, and let's go back to, I'm guessing they've healed each other multiple times over the years. So, we talked about how Nynaeve, maybe she knew where Lan was because of the healing sensibility. Maybe some of this connection between them is the fact that they've healed each other and know where the other person is at all times. And then just constantly being associated with the other person as well, with any relationship that lasts hundreds of years, right? Like, hundreds, imagine an old married couple just multiplied by many, many times. So...
Yeah, very much so. So yeah, Vandine takes them outside and is like, we got this, don't worry about it. And we get this little bit of physical comedy of Elise and Nynaeve like shoving women into the barn with loud squawks and all this stuff, while this like very serious conversation about like how to commit war crimes in a smart way.
And I do feel like it's one of the things that to me kind of cheapens the can a little bit, is like, just have them file into the barn. Do you really have to have Nynaeve picking them up by the scruff of their neck and like thrusting them in? That to me is
it's the noble women who are trapped there alongside the kin. Yeah, it's all part of the same smear, but it is technically not the kin. It's technically all the people who are the screen, the public side of the thing. So give them a small break. Small. And so yeah, then she goes back inside and drops a ward of against eavesdropping, and Elaine's like, well, now I'm extra disturbed. Let's go sort more Terangrial.
Right, because eavesdropping isn't necessarily what they were trying to keep. They wanted you not to be able to hear the screams, is what they're implying there.
But like, is that what they're doing, or is it something else? Like,
or had Elias and Vandine dark friends as well, right?
Totally.
Because I mean, if you look at the header, right, isn't that the dark friend symbol?
Mm-hmm.
So it's maybe they're the ones who are the dark friends in this chapter. You never know. They could be just putting up a silence barrier, not torturing her at all. They didn't get any useful information, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a very legitimate argument to be made, at least up, until we find out later, that Vandine is the dark friend. And that her sister found out and she killed her, right? So how often do we hear that dark friends kill their siblings or kill family members or loved ones unexpectedly? And I think it would have been just awesome and really a good divergent, to actually have, one of the sisters be a dark friend and the other one not, even though they've been together that long. I think that would have been a really interesting plot device.
That would have been rough.
And then have her like try and all that, like that time where she's like skinny and trying to hunt down the killer. That's actually because she's like being ridden by one of the Forsaken to accomplish something, and she's desperately trying to accomplish it and she can't, and all that kind of stuff. Like, for a long time I thought that's how that plot line was going to resolve before they find the dark friend. I was like, oh, it's going to be the sister, it's going to be the other one, that's going to be so cool. So I was kind of disappointed it wasn't, because that was my headcanon before the reveal of who the dark friend was. So I think in this case there's an indication of that, right?
Totally. I can totally see it.
And then you've got two dark friends and one non-dark friend in the tent.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can see it.
This goes up with my shoot. Who's the fat horse thief?
Vannon.
That Vannon's also Forsaken. Right, like things that we know aren't true, but like could have
made sense.
Yeah,
going along.
At the time,
Can make a good conspiracy out of it.
Totally.
So yeah, then we get some Elise disrespecting Renila, which is funny, but whatever.
And then we get to the sorting of Terangrial, I think, which is the most interesting part of this particular chapter.
Yeah, because now we actually get some of the goods.
Yeah. It was interesting, though, that Avienda, yes, she did help search, but we don't get her little, like, reading, even though she's touching a bunch of the Angreal and Terangrial in this case. She's not reading any of them. The way
I think
she does
she's
later.
starting to feel them, and it crystallizes into knowledge later. Like the skill like starts here, but it just starts with her feeling something and not knowing what it is. That's how I kind of interpret it.
But it was interesting to me that there is not necessarily a plot hole, but so much as I think that may be more of a Sanderson was like, oh, I need to give her this skill because I need to describe what these Terangrial are, because I don't think she necessarily had it before.
Well, right, but she does have something, right? Because she like holds the dull knife and like gets really sucked into it, and kind of like Frodo with the ring about it, and
that is true.
There's something there. And then it develops.
Okay. So we saw them doing this a little bit in the last one. She found the brooch, the turtle brooch, and I was wrong. I thought that's the one that she gave to Avienda, but that's incorrect. It's actually the woman.
She gives the brooch to Talon.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, so we got a necklace and bracelets set with colored stones, not joined by chains. I'm learning because of my meticulous note taking. There's actually 2 sets of hand jewelry here.
So this is a necklace and bracelets and a belt and finger rings, right? So this is, but none of that is connected by a chain, because these are all Terangrial. So this is her paralysis net, essentially.
Yeah, the belt is a well. Because you see her using that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think a lot of these end up getting dispersed to. No, it's all one set.
It's all one set, and Nynaeve wears it. Yeah, Nynaeve wears most of that for most.
Right.
Of the
yeah, because Olivia. Well, no, Olivia's wearing the bracelet. Anyhow, that's irrelevant. Every single one was a Terangrial, and they all matched, and they're meant to be worn together. And Elaine's like, "Why would you want to be totally suited up?" And it's like, "Have you seen Iron Man? Have you seen Batman?"
Yeah.
Have you seen any action flick ever? Everyone wants to be wearing all the cool shit all at once. That is absolutely a thing that a magic person would do.
Also, hang out with Codswain. There's a reason she's a badass. It's because she's got one of those. So the next thing is the dagger with the gold wire wrapped around the hilt of Deerhorn with a dull blade. And that we see used in the last battle. She gives that to Rand. Rand takes that into Sheol, and that's how he surprises the Dark One. Because that
hides you from the Dark One's eyes, from the Dark One's sight. And somehow she figures that out. And it fascinates her now, and she clues in on that later.
I wonder if it's a feeling of like safety or something like that, like being in a steading.
I was thinking the Eye of the World space, but yeah, same idea.
Then there's a list of a bunch of stuff that aren't even necessarily Terangrial, but probably are. I mean, finger rings, earrings, necklaces, bracelets, and buckles. Statues and figures of birds and animals and peoples. Several knives that have edges. Those could all just be valuable things, like rings and earrings. Half a dozen large medallions. Hats made of metal.
Well, those, we know what those are.
Oh, what are those?
Well, because Avienda goes through and diagnoses what a lot of these are later.
That's right.
These helmets are how they controlled show wings.
Oh, okay. They were like pilots' helmets.
Yeah, kind of like the flying machines in his Dark Materials, actually. I think that's how I imagine them. It's like these fine helmets that they can then control this like power living thing. Because she says later it has to do with directing a thing that flies, and she doesn't make any sense to her, but like to me it's a show wing helmet. Right. It's a show wing pilot interface.
Rather than having controls, they had a brain interface, basically.
Basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, if you can do compulsion, that means you can clearly read what's in the brain, delving and stuff like that. Like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Put that
you just wire that up with a very specific kind of user interface, and you can fly show wings. And so I think that she must diagnose some of this other stuff later, but that's the only one that I remember.
That is the only one that, like, this is the one with any, like, finger rings, earrings, and necklaces, bracelets, and buckles. Those could be anything. Like, we don't,
yeah.
There's no,
and they never come up.
No.
So, and then,
yeah.
And then we get
the
to
red
the smooth red rod.
A rod, thick as a wrist, bright red and smooth and rounded, firm rather than hard for all that seemed to be stone. It almost felt hot. I mean, if someone said, describe a penis, this is, describe a penis. A rod, thick as your wrist. I mean,
well, depending on the size of wrist.
Yeah, okay. I'm imagining Elaine has very dainty wrists.
Yeah, she's not that much taller than I am. And my wrists haven't grown in a very long time. Not in that direction.
Bright red and smooth and rounded. Like,
and it feels hot, and it makes her think of fire, and then everyone laughs hilariously when she thinks of fire later when they're traveling. And everyone just won't stop laughing at her.
And then later we get the drunk enough to take your clothes off and dance on a table reference.
Yep, because she basically she became a stripper and like did like a pole dance or something, like on a table, like something like that. In response to this rod, because this is clearly a aphrodisiac Terangrial or something.
Age of Legends Aes Sedai were kinky. That's all we're gonna say. Yeah,
they lived a long time and they had a lot of power and resources, and when you have too many resources, you get a very kinky society. I
mean, that's right. Don't DOMs all say that their clients are high powered, like men?
I mean, as a rule, as a general rule.
Yeah. So just imagine Aes Sedai, being that to the nth degree.
Yeah. So that's a sex toy.
I mean, Elida likes being tied up. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, that's a sex toy. It comes up quite, a couple more times. It's a shame it doesn't get used in the last battle.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting way to disable a Forsaken.
Yeah. Hey, Grandal. No, Grandal would be a bad choice.
Yeah, I know.
Because she'd just be like, this is fine.
She'd be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is so tame.
Normal Tuesday.
Next is Metalwork Basketballs, one inside another.
A metal basket work of balls. So this to me is basically a fractal.
Yeah.
So it's
And it
a,
makes music.
a
It's like,
three-dimensional fractal that, well, yeah, just and I imagine the shifting around inside is just, I imagine it's just a pleasant toy.
yeah. Yeah.
Someone, but the whole like going down to infinity is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a blacksmith's puzzle made of glass never comes up again.
No,
Seems
no,
like it must be a ter'angreal. It's a very weird object, but
I imagine if you unlocked it, it might do something interesting. Maybe that's a stasis chamber, or what are they called that the golem was in?
stasis box.
Stasis box. Maybe that's like, and unlocking it is how you open it.
Yeah,
You know,
totally. We just don't know. Or it could be another toy.
yeah, or it could be another toy. Because it does look like there's some toys in here too, right? Like, and that makes sense. Like, if you're making
Yeah,
ter'angreal, why not make toy ter'angreal?
totally. And then two more Angreal, which is nice. You get more power to
Mm-hmm.
drive the bowl with. And
Oh,
then we get
mhm.
the golden bracelet attached to finger rings. That is the picture behind you.
Which is one of those two Angreal.
Yeah.
So she's two more. It's the finger rings and the woman, the Amber woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, these are the two Angreal that she finds that make a really big difference in how several battles go moving forward. But yeah, the seated woman in age darkened ivory, like wrapped in her hair and all of that in this like very Buddha pose kind of thing. It's like a very she's got like what her one hand is with the two fingers together, then the other hand is like up. I forget how it's described, but it feels like the eye of the world to me. The age darkened ivory description is like you really only see stuff described like that for ter'angreal in the eye of the world, and it
Hmm.
feels like a very eye of the world esque item. And then that's all I have aside from a readout. If we even want to do a readout, since we're gonna skippity doo dah right into the next chapter.
I was just reading the chapter where she identifies things to see if there's anything else that was identifiable. A black and white figurine of a bird with long wings and spread in flight is for talking to people a long way off. So is a blue figure of a woman, as well as numerous rings, earrings, and bracelets. So that's appears what those
Everything
are.
she describes is ultimately determined to be because yeah, she has this whole pile of stuff that she can't identify. So it's all ter'angreal, and it's just the little bits of tech that Age of Legends people wore about them interchangeably. Basically, it's a bunch of Apple Watches.
I mean, that's what people like, right? Jordan knew the future.
Basically.
Okay, so nothing else. There's a whole list of other things that she goes through, but nothing else really appears. I mean, we've talked about the flexible black rod. We talked about the metal helmets. We talked about the ivory box.
There's the bracelet with the tiny lock with the key that can be taken off that goes with the thing that's behind you.
That's the Angreal,
That
yeah.
never comes up again.
I assume it's just a way to safeguard the Angreal so that no one else can take it off of you or use it without your permission. Like, you keep the key on it and no one else, like,
it
that
won't
way
change to fit them or attune
right.
to them, to use a D&D term.
Because it does, it fits her perfectly, which we assume it doesn't. That's just a magical property of these wearable ter'angreals that
Right.
they magically fit whoever
Whoever
puts them
puts it on, it fits.
Right.
But if you took that part off, maybe I wouldn't. It would be like, no, I want my master. So yeah, you want to move on to chapter 5?
Just let me read through.
Oh, right.
Yep, it's time. It's
Okay.
time to cleanse the world from summer.
It's time to restart the seasons.
Yes. This is a slightly longer chapter.
Yep.
But this is chapter 5, The Breaking Storm, and our symbol is the Lion of Andor, because this is from Elaine's POV.
And they take off running to Andor.
That's true.
At the end, because they use the Bowl of the Winds, turn around and witness the Shan-Chan attacking Ebudar and take off to Andor as a result. It's a very... Elaine's arc, in many ways, starts here.
And I
And
like
its next big arc, not
right.
the whole arc.
And the breaking storm, I mean, it references both. They break the summer, right? Summer is broken, the backbone of that, but also the storm that Nynaeve refers to a lot that was coming was the Shan-Chan.
Yep. Yep. The Shan-Chan invasion proper.
So they climb up. Basically, they're in a very flat place. And again, if you've ever been in the southeast, U.S. southeast, there's a lot of flat land, a lot of swamp-like areas. You know, you get up on the slightest rise and you can see forever because it's the only hill in any direction, in anywhere. And so this feels very familiar to me, sort of looking over the swampland that then goes into the sea. Just yeah, that sort of the Gulf Coast of the country feels very much like this to me.
That's a part of the country I've never been to.
Mm-hmm. And just the weather as well, just like that humid heat,
Sultry,
sticky, yeah,
sultry in quotes.
Mm-hmm. There's I mean, Abu Dar is New Orleans to me. Like I feel that in my bones. And this reinforces that view to me.
They get up one little hill.
Yeah, one little hill, and they've got a marvelous view because it's the only little hill. The land was really quite flat here, except for those few hills. Abu Dar lay just out of sight to the south, even if she embraced the one power. So basically, and that's the coast. And so they can see all around them. Nynaeve is pissed that they wasted an hour looking for powerful kin, because none of the kin were powerful enough, except for the one, I think.
Well, yeah, they find one woman at the farm, and she is one of the very first women that they recovered, because she's one of the two who are actual runaways who ends up breaking psychologically from the strain of being around Aes Sedai and goes back to being a novice 400 years after running away. And so she passes out repeatedly from terror, and so she didn't get very far away. So they spent a whole hour looking for her when she was right there behind them, just smelling salts. So Nynaeve is very, very grouchy. She's comedically grouchy this whole chapter.
And so at this point, she ends up giving the Angreal, the woman, to Avienda, the bracelet and rings to Nynaeve, and the amber turtle to Talon. So she actually doesn't keep any for herself.
Oh, she doesn't.
Mm-mm.
Huh.
But she gives them to the three most powerful of the channels. Well, maybe Avienda might not be, but Avienda's up there, you know?
Yeah, Avienda's up there, and she really wants to cheer Avienda up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to Nynaeve and Talon, because they are the strongest.
I think she was going to keep the seated woman Angreal for herself,
right.
And then she just gave it to Avienda to cheer her up. But
yeah. And Marilil has started to have her tumultuous relationship with the Seafinder, with the Sea Folk at this point. That has started. Her interaction with them since we last saw them has begun that. She's now looking at them and like twitching, like just a little bit. Like that dynamic is officially moving.
There's a certain amount of respect and lack of respect, and just people trying to figure out where they stand on the social pecking order that's going on here, and people are realizing that the reverence they held for the Aes Sedai is kind of pointless.
Yeah.
No.
And the Aes Sedai are super not okay with that.
Right.
It's, the whole, like, we're a different flesh, we're special, we're demigods, we're near immortal. Like, it's why the Age of Legends was not actually a utopia.
Yeah. And that leads into this sort of interesting story about an Aes Sedai getting cheated by a Domani and a Ata Anmier, which I think just, in one way, it's like, oh yeah, the Aes Sedai clearly got cheated, but at the same time, you're still comparing yourself to Aes Sedai. They are still the gold standard of being clever. It's like, how do you prove that you're clever? You cheat an Aes Sedai. No, you don't cheat an Ata Anmier. You don't cheat a Domani.
Right.
You cheat an Aes Sedai. That's how you prove you're clever. Which I guess, in a lot of ways, because there's consequences to cheating Aes Sedai more so than anybody else, but... Yeah, it's just an interesting... I'm not really sure what the point of it is, other than... It's a weird thing to recall at this point.
It's... People want to believe that Aes Sedai are human.
Mm.
And to tell a story like that is dangerous because they can blast your ass, but it is still true.
Right.
Like, they are still human.
Right. We do hear that not a lot of people tell jokes about Aes Sedai just because it can be dangerous. Or they think it can be dangerous.
Yeah, which it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Really. I mean, maybe a little bit, but yeah. So then Avienda gets all like, my honor will cause me to suicide because I'm prickly, and Elaine being like, could you chill? Could you just chill?
It's very much imposter syndrome. Reminds me of the conversations I had before you record Broken Earth.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I can't do this properly. I have shamed you.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's absolutely.
and I'm
So
like,
much
no,
empathy.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're great. What are you talking about? You're saying you can't do something you shouldn't be able to do. Why are you ashamed about this? Let's walk back from the edge and just get this over with and do the thing we came here to do instead of agonizing over not being perfect in every single way. You and I have never had that conversation.
No, we have not.
No,
but
no, you've never told me that. I've never told you that.
No.
It's no. Mm-mm.
No.
Mm-mm. It's what friends do for each other. But I mean, it's just I relate to Avienda so much there. Just that like, oh, I'm never gonna be good enough. I'm never gonna be able to do the right things. I do love the mistake where she's like, I mean, I would totally torture her. I just don't know how.
Yeah, that misunderstanding is like, yeah, no, you aren't completely identical twins yet.
No. You still
never
have
will
some
be.
very different cultural backgrounds where, you know, they're both like, I can't do it. Oh, I couldn't do it either. Yeah, I don't know how. What?
I mean, I don't think she would succeed at it. I think that the maidens having the role of you can't even watch until you've been a warrior for 10 years proves that she would be as inept as Elaine at doing it. But yeah, their approaches to the situation are nonetheless hilariously different.
So, and then we have the conversation where she gives her this Angreal, and she's like, twice as much. Yeah. Do we know, do all those Angreal end up back with Elaine? What ends up happening with those Angreal?
I think Avienda keeps hers, Nynaeve keeps hers, and then Talon gives hers back. And it ends up being with Nynaeve, and Olivia uses it during the cleansing of Sidene. Because Nynaeve is obviously occupied. There's also this lovely line of, you're about as weak and soft as a stone. That had to be the oddest compliment she had ever paid anyone, yet Avienda actually looked gratified. It's adorable. I love it. I love their relationship. They're funny.
So just from Crossroads of Twilight and Knife of Dreams, it appears that the Amber Brooch and the Seated Woman are just sort of like, both Avienda and Elaine just sort of grab it, and like, because they're together, it's just in storage with them.
Yeah. Talon gives hers back because she's obedient. And then we learn that Nynaeve has the character flaw of having a bad head for heights, which I love. She's so strong, but she gets seasick and she has a bad head for heights.
Yeah, I love that she can be so emotionally strong while at the same time physically very vulnerable to things like that. And she doesn't let that affect the fact. She's like, no, that doesn't make me vulnerable at all. I'm still just as badass.
Which she is.
No.
And then she starts apologizing to Elaine and being like, I'm a fool. Please tell me when I'm acting stupid. I'm losing my wits in a man. Like, well, she's just giddy and doesn't know how to deal with it. And it's a really bad time for her to be giddy, and she knows it. And Elaine's just like, what are you saying right now?
I mean, I think in a lot of ways she's like, I've experienced, we talked about this, I've experienced sex for the first time, right? Like, I think that's really what she's talking about. Now, whether the writing is, you know, great around that is sort of what he's implying, is like,
and getting to be like fully in love, not unrequited distance love, but like, you're doing it and you're getting all the time together. It's Yeah, it's a very big difference, and she's absolutely giddy and over the moon, and it's the worst possible time for her
Yeah.
to be that kind of distracted.
You don't know what it's like, though. I'm sorry. Like, you don't know what is like. Yeah.
Elaine offers comfort from wisdom she doesn't have. They have different kinds of lovesick
Yeah.
going on.
She does, though. I like this. I've been behaving like a fool. Although she doesn't immediately turn around and say, it's that bloody man's fault.
Mm-hmm.
When he's not right in front of me, I can hardly think of anything else. When he is, I can hardly think at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if it's made for her hand. Here's the... then I have her passing the Angriel to Talon. I think you've been trying to get us
Sometimes
past
it was
that for a while.
difficult to tell Nynaeve leading from Nynaeve bullying.
Yeah.
Because she's like apologizing, and then she's like, okay, give me an angry girl, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go do this. Like, she's
Yeah. Because she turns around, she says, stop apologizing and do what you came here to do. Lead. And she's like, fine. All right, you, now. Like...
yeah. It's
That's her only
wonderful.
mode. Yeah.
But yeah, then the whole thing about Talon not getting time to get her Angriel taught to her is just like such sticklers for rank. It's so annoying.
There is a lot of weirdness here where it's like, okay, we're going to introduce everyone to Angriel for the first time, introduce everyone to linking for the first time, and then we're going to go ahead and do the most, like, important thing in the world. It's like, maybe practice one or two weaves first? I don't know.
And like no trust building exercises between these women who are going to be bound up into this incredibly important thing. And like,
Right.
yeah, you can't be driven to dying, but still you'd think that like a trust fall or two would go a long way towards like
Right.
team unity.
So yeah, no, there's it's just forged together, and they're just like, all right, let's bang these things together, and okay, I know it's lumpy, but it works. Okay, go.
And there is a sense of urgency with the timing.
There is. So I get that, but like, whew. And there is a certain amount of like inexperience on Nynaeve and Elaine's part, where like they themselves are inexperienced at this, and they're basically, she's like covering for the fact that Nynaeve can't really control that easily and has her own, they're doing a lot of smoke and mirrors to make this work and to look like they know what they're doing, when in reality they're flying by the seat of their pants as much as anybody.
And Kyra is very rude and imposing and pompous. That's basically what she does, is I know everything and I'm a badass and I'm driving this ship.
Do we ever get like a story about her that's interesting?
It's more of world building out what the Sea Folk are like when Talon kind of explains the family dynamics of why she wants to run away to the tower. She kind of gives a little bit of context to the family dynamics, and that lets you sort of see the Sea Folk. But again, it's a lot like Elise. It's just what it says on the tin. There's nothing really interesting happening there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm looking at what her story after this, and it's Carrie and the other Windfinders, Carrie and the other Windfinders, Carrie and the other Windfinders.
Yeah, she just leads.
Yep.
She's
Nynaeve demonstrates the shielding on Talon as Zyda and the 6 Windfinders. So there's just no... Zyda calls a meeting of the first 12 and they're Windfinders. Yeah, there's zero reference of her doing anything independently at all after the cleansing.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's amazing for someone who leads the cleansing, which seems to be this super important role, and they just, yep, that's it. They're gone after that.
Yeah, the Sea Folk get a very raw deal on page time, given how critical they are at this moment.
I'd even like to see like a Forsaken take revenge and be like, oh yeah, because like there's a Dark Friend present, so I'm sure they reported back, who led everything. Like, I'd love to see her just be like, oh, she was killed, like even off a single line of like she was killed in revenge for, or a Forsaken being like, I took out the one who led that circle, right? Like, that would be a cool one-off liner.
Nope, she's just one of the many Sea Folk that helped with the last battle using the bowl or something.
Yep.
Yeah, and she's just a basic political climber who's got lots of power in Sea Folk society and has a lot of animosity towards her daughter and her sister.
And happens to have studied the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, she happens to be a specialist scholar in this particular thing. So she's well qualified to drive the Bull of the Winds with a circle of 13 linked women with Angreal to try to literally change the weather with a device that's meant to be used in concert with several other devices, but is in fact just being used by itself. And it's a very incredible feat that actually spits in the Dark One's eye quite effectively.
And I feel like the next chunk is a bit of a knowledge dump on how circles work and how circles work with Angreal. And how to form them, and it walks us through that whole process.
And how embracing the source is hard to hold on to, or hard to stay at the edge of, which is just an exceedingly over-sexualized paragraph.
It's very sexualized. She's just edging that whole time.
Yeah.
She's like, Naeem, I gotta come. Like, that's basically what's going on.
She's panting, and it's just like, you just did that in front of everybody.
Right? Right?
Okay.
I mean, this is why, like, when I talk about embracing the source as being, like, an orgasm, like, I've talked about that many times, and it's paragraphs that, like, this one that makes me go, yeah, like,
that's canonical.
Yeah, I'm not making this up. I'm not bringing this out of, whole cloth. I'm not doing it to be funny. I'm like, that's literally what he's putting on the page.
Yeah. Which part of me enjoys and part of me hates. Like, I can't decide how I feel about it, which means it's good writing. So.
Right. And I mean, because so much of this story is about the male-female dynamic, of course, the power is going to be centered around sex, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
Have you read Ayn Rand?
Ayn Rand?
Sorry. Ayn Rand.
Anne Rice?
Anne Rice, thank you.
That was the Anne I was expecting. I'm like, how? I have not read Ayn Rand, so I'm not. Maybe I'm missing something, but I have read Anne Rice.
Have you read Anne Rice? Because yes, very over-sexualized vampire power. That's what I was going for. Not over-sexualized libertarianism. I have actually that actually is a really good description of Atlas Shrugged. Over-sexualized libertarianism.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm disturbed. That disturbs me. Oh, and Chad agrees.
Yeah.
I'm bothered.
No, it's not something you want to read. It's really not. Because it's. All right, this is definitely a tangent, but it's amazingly seductive. All you have to do is assume that people are innately good. That's not the right thing. That people will always innately do the right thing for society at all times in all places, and that if you don't, you deserve to be poor and outcast. The libertarian, sorry, I'm cutting all this, but the libertarian ideas, right? Like, I don't understand them enough to articulate them well enough to be like, this is what the book is trying to say. Like, I haven't done that counter-factual argument to actually, like, argue that side well enough to understand their side.
Yeah, I don't understand it, but I do just remember that I actually do get to do the last episode because it's an even. So I just realized this is an odd because you said you're going to cut all this, and I'm like, are you? Oh, this is an odd, which means I get to edit the last one. So,
It's not fair.
I'll give you a preview before it goes up. Anyhow. Back from the deep tangents.
Right, sorry about that. That was terrible. I was not prepared to go into a rant about Ayn Rand. That was entirely a Freudian slip.
So there's a bunch of distrust from the sea folk about linking.
Right. Yeah, and I did want to reference that. Yes, the White Tower studied for ages and determined there was no way to do a link against your will. The Seanchan, they came up with a way.
Well, and there's also the line, what was in the pages that had not survived?
Right.
She had noticed a slight change in Saritha's inflection at one point.
Right. With nothing was in the pages, but maybe the word of mouth, maybe something that they heard about, like...
Maybe something that was worked out some other way, right. Or something that was left orally that used to be in the pages but isn't in the pages now. Like, there's a lot of ways that could go. But yeah, it's a bunch of mistrust and a bunch of explanation. Blah blah blah. Exposition, 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 exposition. Nynaeve has a hard time relinquishing control. Shocking revelation. Elaine's awareness goes high because she's cranked full of the power, and it's amazing. Nynaeve is horny. Garini and Kirstian are terrified.
Yeah.
Kyra is as stubborn as Nynaeve and is bad with control. And rips it out of Elaine's hands. Like, that's the next 2 pages. That's what happens.
It's just summarizing everybody's emotions at the moment in which they bond. And so this is a little bit of like a preview of Perrin's smelling chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Right, where you have pages and pages of him just describing the emotions of every single character on page. And it can be fun to follow if you're interested in what those characters are doing, or if those characters have any significance to the story whatsoever. But we just don't get enough from these characters for me to care how they're feeling.
And then we get one of the most visually stunning parts of the series, which is this 1.5-page description of the Bowl of the Winds actually being used, which I really hope they keep this in the show.
This is so good.
It's, oh my god, the visuals are just a writhing braided column of Sidar shoots up into the sky. The bowl is drawing Sidene as well as Sidar, so you've got the spikes and the curlicues and the voids and the glowy parts.
Do you think this is worth a read? Just this big long chunk of using the bowl?
Honestly, it's so good.
Yeah, let's just give it a read.
Go for it. Do it.
At that moment, is it Carrie?
Kyra. I've been listening to the audiobooks again,
Yeah.
so I'm very sure that's how they say it.
That is a weird pronunciation of those letters.
Yeah.
Okay. At that moment, Kyra drew deeply. Sidar flooded through Elaine, almost as much as she could hold. An unbroken ring of light blazed into being, joining the women in the circle, brighter whenever one used an angrial, but nowhere faint. She watched closely as Kyrie channeled, forming a complex weave of all 5 powers. A 4-pointed star that she laid atop the bowl, with what Elaine somehow was sure was exquisite precision. The star touched, and Elaine gasped. Once she had channeled a trickle into the bowl, in Teleron Riyadh to be sure, and only a reflection of the bowl, though still a dangerous thing to do, and that clear crystal had turned a pale blue, and the carved clouds moved. Now the bowl of the winds was blue, the bright blue of a summer sky, and fleecy white clouds billowed across it. The 4-pointed star became 5-pointed. The composition of the weave altered slightly, and the bowl was a green sea with great heaving waves. 5 points became 6, and it was another sky, a different blue, darker, winter perhaps, with purple clouds heavy with rain or snow. 7 points, and a gray-green sea raged in storm. 8 points, and sky. 9, and sea. And suddenly Elaine felt the bowl itself drawing Sidar, a wild torrent far greater than all the circle together could manage. The changes continued unabated inside the bowl, sea to sky, weaves to clouds, but a writhing, braided column of Sidar shot up from that flat. But a writhing, braided column of Sidar shot up from that flattish crystal disk. Fire and air, water and earth and spirit, a column of intricate lace as wide as the bowl, climbing up and up into the sky until its top rose out of sight. Kyra continued her weaving, sweat streaming down her face. She paused, seemingly only to blink salty drops away from her eyes as she examined the images in the bowl, and then laid a new weave. The pattern of the braiding in the thick column altered with every weave, subtly echoing what Kyra wove. I'm going to stop there.
It's so cool.
And I love the start of the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pointed stars that clearly she's building something. She's creating. She's like, this is what the weather should be. I don't know if she's doing sort of seasons or locations or.
I think it's seasons.
I think
she's
it's seasons.
She's going through each season for sky and ocean.
Gotcha.
And it's another star each time. and I think it must cycle over at some point.
Right, because well,
Or
you
maybe it
start
just
with
keeps going up.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 6 different stars she lays down.
Maybe there's like 6 seasons, the way that the sea folk reckon
So
weather.
let's see. 4 is sky. 5 is sea. 6 is sky. 7 is sea. 8 is sky. 9 is sea. Yeah, so it's alternating sea and sky. And you start with summer, winter, and we don't know the last one. But I'm guessing that they're getting away from summer because that's what they're stuck in. So I'm guessing she goes like spring.
She's cycling the 3 other seasons.
Yeah, the 3 other seasons. Yeah, basically like
Yeah.
let's kickstart these 3 other seasons.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. And so we get a description of how they feel inside. And then there's another description of it that I want to read because it's more cool visual shite.
Go for it.
From Kyra came only determination, as steely hard as her expression. Nothing was going to stand in Kyra's way, certainly not the mere presence of shadow-tainted Sidene mixed into her weaving. Nothing was going to stop her. She worked the flows, and abruptly spiderwebs of Sidar blossomed from the unseen top of the column, like uneven spokes of a wheel, almost a solid fan to the south, sparser fans reaching north and southwest. Sparser fans reaching north and northwest, single lacy spokes stretching in other directions. They changed as they grew, never the same from one moment to the next, spreading across the sky, farther and farther, until the ends of the pattern also passed out of sight. Not just Sidar there either, Elaine was certain. In places that spiderweb caught and curved around something she could not see. Still Kyra wove, and the column danced to her bidding, Sidar and Sidene together, and the spiderweb altered and flowed like a lopsided kaleidoscope spinning across the heavens, vanishing into the distance, on and on and on. That's so cool.
Definitely cool.
This lopsided kaleidoscope, like it's a very psychedelic image, honestly.
I sort of think about like being in a planetarium and like someone turns on the laser lights and like yeah, I can imagine doing acid and watching this whole thing going on in the sky. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. It's really trippy, and it's interesting that it's not even in all directions. I like that, like there's more that go to the south. Like I don't quite know like why it goes lopsidedly in different directions, but something to do with the geography of the planet and where the weather systems need to be and where the the jet stream is and all.
I kind of
of
assumed
stuff.
it was because they're in the northern hemisphere.
Right, exactly.
So you have more. I mean, but technically you're on a globe, so shouldn't they all go equally in all directions, right? Like, but maybe it has to do with the spin.
I think it has to do with where the weather is most distorted.
Gotcha.
I think the most power is going to where the pattern of the world is the most like snagged.
Do you think that's in the south? I would think that would be in the north.
Yeah, because it's summer.
Okay.
So I'm like, summer is a south heat, like that somehow it has to go like kick the south in the face, like kick the heat back.
Well, and we did talk about
something.
maybe it's the tilt of the planet. That's the fixing the season. So maybe to re-tilt the planet, you have to like push the south away from the sun or something like that.
Yeah, you have to rotate it
Yeah.
back more to the north. Yeah, totally. That could be it. But I like that he's not just like it's even in all directions. It's like no, the shape of the planet is factoring into, and their position on the planet is factoring into where the spokes are going and where they're positioned. And then they just let go of the circle and Elaine hates it because it's very abrupt. There should have been a little bit of like off ramping to that.
It would be like ending a podcast without music or something like that.
Right. It's just like what?
Well, okay, we're done. Yeah. Or like slamming on the brakes at the end of a car ride. Yep.
Yeah.
And so the things they did, they severely overtaxed this, right? They had Angreal, they had a full circle, and they gave it just ridiculously big ropes of power, right? That's what the sea folk do that no one has ever been able to do before, which is create large flows, individual flows. And so that combination has really overtaxed the one power in the local area. And that becomes a thing. Because
the weirdness,
and it's really subtle, and it's something that I think I missed the first couple of read throughs, because a lot of times it's from Rand's POV, and he's got so many things going on with the crossing of the streams that happen basically at the exact same time, right? That's the last time we saw him, he crossed streams. So the next time we see him, he both has the cross streams effect and some of the Ebu Dar effect. And so it's very hard to distinguish what's going on. But this crackling, this overtaxing of the one power actually leads to this effect where, like, it doesn't do what they want and then suddenly snaps into place. Right? We see that a lot with some of the weaving and stuff like that. There's just a lot of, and we have it confirmed that it was the use of the bowl of the winds that caused that. And it is most highly pronounced around the farm, right? The location where they use the bowl of the winds. But it is also actually around where those big ropes went out, those linear ropes. Like if that rope crossed your space, you also have the effect in that area. So that's why it's spread out across the whole continent. It's not just centralized. It's actually where those ropes spread across the entire continent.
Because it's actually changing, like, the nature of reality to a certain extent, and that's taxing the one power, which makes up everything. Just a smidge. Just a smidge. It's like Thor, like, drinking out of the horn enough to actually create tides. It's like it's a smidge, but it's significant.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then Nynaeve says, I feel like a kitchen sieve that just had the whole mill poured through it. And I'm like, just you wait until the cleansing.
Yeah.
And then you're going to pass out and not wake up for 3 days.
Right. Yeah. You think you've been used roughly now.
Yeah.
Just wait.
You think you used a lot of power now. Wait until you've cleansed the entire mass of Sidene.
Oh, I just wanted to read one more thing. When they turn off the power, the bowl turned clear again, but small patches of Sidar flashed and crackled around its edges. That, I think, is representing... That's like after they're done using it, it's still crackling. And as we said, the bowl is a representative of the world, of the sky upside down, right? So around the edges would be like all around the horizon. The horizon, yeah. So
yeah. And then it fades from that. They think that they're still just feeling that into feeling the Shan Chan attack, which is confusing. Right. But yeah, they're all very happy about it. Avienda says in Maidenhand Talk, more than worth the price.
Yeah, and I thought this was funny that, like, trying to convince people that the climate is changing is difficult, as it turns out. And she's like, no, it is getting better. I did it. And everyone's like, yeah, it's still hot outside. And she's like, well, yeah, it's not going to get cold instantly.
Yeah,
and
it didn't. Go ahead.
I feel like we were struggling from the opposite effect of being like, yeah, all the CO2 we're pumping in the atmosphere is going to heat things up. And people are like, well, it's not hot right now. It's like, we're turning the rudder on a ship. And even, this is one of the things that really drives me nuts about the CO2 discussion. When people are like, oh, well, if we get to net zero by 2050, we'll be fine. I'm like, no, you've turned the rudder on the ship.
Yeah.
Even at net zero, things are still going to keep getting hotter long after you stop releasing carbon dioxide.
Yeah, we have to sequester. We need negative progress.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a thing. Where was I gonna go with that?
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
It's totally fine. I was gonna say, I think it's funny that Nynaeve is the one that doesn't get that. She's the village wisdom. She used to, like, listen to the wind professionally. She is the one person who shouldn't be confused about the difference between weather and climate.
I do think she gets it. I think she's just like, nope, not giving you anything. You can't prove it. Like, I think there's a little bit of just bargaining in there as well. Like, I think she doesn't get it because it's her job not to get it. To be like, you haven't proven it. Like, it's not... She doesn't know for sure that the weather has changed.
True. And I mean, I totally agree with her that they should have to hang out until it's obvious that something has happened. And that will take a while. The sea folk are not correct to be grabbing the bowl and saying, we did it. It's like,
No.
there might need to be adjustments. Like, no, It will take a minute. You just said so yourself. You stay for a minute.
That's actually something I wondered about, is why don't, it seems like they could travel and use it again and then travel and use it again. It seems like that would be helpful to like use it in multiple places to...
They don't have this many strong women to work with.
Yeah.
And they're all exhausted. There's no way they could do this again without getting several good sleeps, I think.
Well, okay, but yeah, do that.
But yeah, but then they're busy with like running away from the Sean Chan and shit.
Fair. So yeah, this is the... I can almost feel an echo of Saidar, and I think that echo is just them channeling the Sean Chan channeling.
Yeah, this is now. First there was the crackler on the edge of the bowl, and then there's the faint feel of channeling from Ebudar. And they bleed right into each other.
Right.
But yeah, that is the attack on Ebudar starting, and they have to shuffle their plans very, very quickly.
Do you think the use of the Bowl of the Winds caused the Sean Chan to start their attack? Do you think that they saw these big power things going across the sky and they're like, holy shit, whatever that is, we're going, we need to attack now before they do something? Because like they were clearly prepping to attack, but attacking at that moment seems to have been caused, I mean, by the big
can't
signal.
imagine it wasn't related.
Right.
I'd never thought of that before until you asked, but yeah, they're getting ready, they're sneaking up, they're loading their gunpowder, and then suddenly there's power in the sky. Like, okay, I guess we're not waiting for the signal from the generals, because that is the signal. Ugh.
Yeah, and like, and again, 13, I mean, Nynaeve and Talon, who's just as powerful, so 2 Forsaken level channelers with Angreal in a group of 13, right? The more power that's been used almost any time, except when Rand, used Kalendor, or because he hasn't really used the Choden Call yet.
Yeah, no, this is probably the most power that's been used in 3,000 years.
Yeah.
And they don't think to warn anybody about what it was. Like the amount of people on their side who are scared shitless by this. I mean, same with the cleansing.
More so
same with the cleansing. But this foreshadows that, like, you should really send out a memo. Like, save the date. I'm going to be ripping reality just slightly for a repair on Tuesday at 3. Like,
can they just form a Discord server to sort of organize all this and tell our own reality?
They really need a Discord server. Yeah.
Just a little pocket reality that you can use.
Yeah, you can just put a Google or a Doodle poll into it, like.
I mean, they do figure out how to leave messages. They say that they can throw down an inverted weave and it stays there for a while. So it seems like you should, be able to create forum posts in Teleron Riyadh for folks. Yeah. Yeah,
we just have an auto archive.
Right. Oh, right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're not allowed to have our characters communicate in this story.
Right. Yeah, no, not in my Wheel of Time. Nope. We don't have communication.
No. That's the 3-book version of Wheel of Time, where the characters all communicate. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which would be very bad business model for us.
Would have finished this podcast ages ago.
Yeah. I mean, watch us. I mean, as we're compressing chapters, we are getting through this a little faster.
We have.
So yeah, they decide that they have to all skedaddle. Nynaeve is like, I'm gonna go get Matt. And Elaine's like, no, you aren't. You're fucking exhausted, and there's an entire army. You cannot go back for him. They don't have any reason to hurt him. We gotta bail. They'll collar us otherwise. Like,
and they initially assume it's Forsaken, right? Like, that much power, it's got to be Forsaken. They're coming for us. It's got to be Moghedian at all, right? And company, and they're like, huh, well, that sucks. And then they realize, because there's a rockin', that it's the Sean Chan. And then they really panic.
Right. Yeah.
It's the panic over the Sean Chan is much, much greater than the panic over the Forsaken. Because they can handle Forsaken. They cannot handle the Sean Chan.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's a very different animal. And there's a great line here that people may recognize from another character. The rose crown is heavier than a mountain, and duty will make you weep. But you must bear and do it. Do what must be done.
Duty is heavier than a mountain. Clearly used across many continents and countries in different references. And I can see where that Borderlander saying would get into Andor and become the rose crown is heavier than a mountain rather than duty is heavier than a mountain.
The rose crown is your duty.
Yep.
It's Yeah, her conviction to her duty to rule is one of the things I don't get about her. I have a hard time with the whole "I have a right to rule" thing. I just don't grok that whole perspective, but I get that she's very committed to it.
I mean, she was raised that way, right? In a country where queens have ruled hereditarily for 1,000 years. You know, and she's not wrong that she's a better ruler than some of the other people out there.
True. It's true.
Now, do I think she should have given it to Dylan and gone off to go adventuring? Yes.
It would have been a lot simpler. But
But
again, we'd have a shorter series.
yeah.
If she'd chosen that. So.
So yeah, they abandoned, and this is the split between Matt. Matt is sent to go get Elaine. That was the whole point of him being here, was to protect her and be with her and be with them. It's interesting that he doesn't go with them to this. I don't remember if we really covered exactly why.
Because of Oliver.
Yeah.
It's because of Oliver. That's why the party has split.
Oh, yeah. Because he goes to get Oliver.
He's like, I'll catch you up on the
Okay,
road.
yeah.
It'll be fine. And then the Shan-Chan attack before he can find Oliver.
Right, and get out of the city. That's right.
Yeah. But it's all Oliver's fault that the party has split. But this is when the split becomes permanent rather than short term.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also when the sea folk get disconnected from their ships, like the particular cast we see, right? Like Renata even says here, like, my ship fights for his life and I am not on his deck.
Mm-hmm.
Like her and her group all these windfinders are cut off and they're saved from the Shan-Chan, but they're cut off from their people, from their ships. They're very unmoored for a long time.
And in a lot of ways, because all these the most powerful sea folk channelers aren't on their ships, there's not really a lot of resistance to the Shan-Chan. The Shan-Chan may not have taken Ebu Dar as easily if they had to fight a bunch of sea folk channelers on their ships who could have absolutely fought back.
It's kind of like the strike at Shale Ghul, right? Like the 13 most powerful are off and away,
right, totally,
like isolated from everything else. Yeah, it's a bummer for them. It really sucks for them. They become refugees in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
They were just on a field trip and now they are refugees. And she's like, I'm gonna take a gateway out of here. And Elaine's like, first of all, you literally can't. Second of all, that makes no sense. Don't do that.
Especially since if someone who had been in the circle, they probably would. Again, this is the sort of fuzzy rules around learning a space and how to. I do like that we get to see what happens if you try and form a gateway and you don't know the area. The whole like falling apart thing. That was cool. Like what actually happens if you try.
Yeah.
I really like the fire the sea folk does at the Rockin'.
Yeah.
The sea folk, who made no throwing gesture as part of their weaving. A hail of fire so thick it seemed the fire must be forming itself out of the air. And just that like just massive thread of fire that just the whole thing becomes fire rather than
I'm seeing just like a sheet of fire just like materializing in the air, like it's being like snapped in the breeze.
I thought that was cool.
Thanks for pointing that out. I had totally skipped past. I was like, and then they attack it, whatever. Right. But that's a cool description.
Because the sea folk have those thick weaves.
Yeah, they don't fuck around. They don't do small power things.
Now they missed.
They kill one and they push the other one. There's a scene later on where you get to get into the head of one of the people on this Rockin', and one falls off. They get hit by the shockwave and the Rockin' starts to tumble.
I thought that was the explosion of the gateway.
Oh shit, you're right.
That's not
you're
this.
Right.
Yeah, that's a different Rockin'.
You're right. It's at this spot for almost these reasons, but you're right. That's the shockwave.
I think this one, or is it this Rockin' though?
I think it is this Rockin'. Yeah, they dodged the fire once, and now they're being careful. So yeah, I think it's the same one.
We'll have to
so
verify
I'm only partially wrong. Aes Sedai believed a great many things to be true, and some of them actually were. I like that.
Yeah, so I'm forwarding. Shuellen moved the reins slightly, and Sagani banked smoothly. So Sagani is the name of the Rockin. He was well trained. At least the smoke had stopped rising from where Tuan and Maku had died in the olive grove. So that's the one that they hit.
So that does imply that she was the other one.
She was the other
she
one.
Saw it and was like, "Oh, it could have been me."
Although now that I look at this again, it does seem like they were in the second wave that showed up.
Well, I guess it would make sense actually that the one would like zip out and go back and get more.
Get more, and like this one knows who died, but see, this is weird. Maybe she came back with them. If this, I'll have to read this more closely, but
well, when we get to that chapter, we can examine that again.
it's not clear. It's not obvious one way or the other whether she is or is not from the reading. It's like she could be, but it definitely doesn't make it obvious. She doesn't reference like when they threw a fireball at me or anything like that.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Cool. Headcanon accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a headcanon moment, just because I think there's no proof one way or the other. So if you want to be the same Torakan, you can make it. If you don't want to, if you want to be one that showed up with the rest of the troops, it could be as well.
So all I have left is the readout.
Yeah, let's do the readout.
I think you have to start with Renila strode up.
Renila strode up with the bowl in her arms, once more swathed in its white covering. Some of our ships have encountered these Shan-chan. If they are in Ebudar, then the ships beat to sea. My ship fights for his life, and I am not on his deck. We go now. And she formed the weave for a gateway, right there. It tangled uselessly, of course, flared bright for an instant, then collapsed into nothing. But Elaine squeaked in spite of herself. Right there in the middle of them? You aren't going anywhere from here unless you mean to stay long enough to learn this hilltop, she snapped. She hoped none of the women who had been in the circle tried the weave. Holding Saidara was the fastest way to learn a place. She could have made it work here, and very likely so could they. You aren't going to a moving ship from anywhere. I don't even think it's possible. Mirella nodded, though that meant little. Aes Sedai believed a great many things to be true, and some of them actually were. As well if the sea folk believed it proven. In any case, Nynaeve, haggard and staring, was in no condition to do any leading at the moment, so Elaine went on. She hoped she managed to do her mother's memory proud. But most of all, you aren't going anywhere except with us, because our bargain isn't complete. The Bowl of the Winds is not yours until the weather is right. Not precisely true, unless you twisted the words of the bargain a little, and Renila opened her mouth, but Elaine plowed on. And because you made a bargain with Matrim Cawthon, my subject. You go voluntarily where I want you, or you go tied to a pack saddle. Those were the choices you accepted. So get down this hill now, Renila D. Blue Star, before the Shan-chan sweep down on us with an army and a few hundred women who can channel and would like nothing better than to see us collared alongside them. Now, run! To her astonishment, they ran.
Renila Din Blue Star.
Din Callan.
Callan. Is what they say in the audiobooks in colon. I mean, she's such an asshole.
I'm going with it.
I approve. It's not a correction, it's a comment. It's perfect.
A Renila Din colon with a blue star on the end of it. That's all I'm saying. She's basically a cat with a star butthole.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. The sea folk are generally cats.
I just imagine them as a group of cats. Yeah. They've got that swaying
way more
walk.
water into it. Way more into water than most cats are.
Yeah, but a lot of them, they can't even, so maybe they don't even swim. They stay on their ships.
I think they can all swim.
I think they can too. We see her dump. We do see Nynaeve dump a bunch of them in the water.
Yeah, and Egwene does. I mean, they can all.
Not Nynaeve.
Yeah, they can all swim.
Okay, so my cat analogy doesn't work great, but
there are some cats that love swimming.
That's
and
true.
have made that part of their habitat. Like in South America, there are cats that swim as part of their hunting thing. So, and I think snow leopards also maybe go into hot springs.
But I feel like this is very much about herding cats.
Yeah. No, it's they're finicky and persnickety and just show you their buttholes all the time.
So hooray, we are out of summer, endless summer. We now no longer have to reference every chapter, starting off with it being hot and dry and unseasonable. Now we get all these little references to, a wind, and it was breaking, and a drizzle, and first bits of green, and then all of a sudden freezing cold and snow, and oh god, it's cold because it's the middle of winter, and it's been the middle of winter for a couple of months now.
Yeah, and that will match well with our transition from summer into winter.
Yes, yeah. No, it actually works out very well.
We're recording this mid-October, so summer's over and winter is starting to make itself known on the horizon. We
did transition very well into that. We did most of the last book in an unseasonably warm summer, and we're going to do most of this book in the transition, and then into the winter. We're
going to be doing this book all through the winter, especially because of the pause that the show's going to put in it.
Yeah,
we're really going to be doing this book through the winter, and then I don't know when we're going to get to Winter's Heart. It'll probably be fucking summer again, but...
yeah, probably by the time we get to Winter's Heart, it'll be summer. But...
yeah, well.
Yeah, you can't always be on. It is always fun when the wet weather matches the book you're reading.
Yeah. We got a lot of the nasty summer shit during, we were doing hot chapters during the heat wave. Yep. We got a good lineup on that, so...
But congratulations on sticking with us for 3 episodes tonight.
TC Traveler and Super Chicken are absolute badasses.
Definitely. Keep it up. Thank you so much for stopping by. We will see you in the next chapter, which is
1 week from today.
And this is The Exploding Gateway, and we will be joined by our guest,
Kayla, who won the slot at SpoilerCon.
So really excited to have Kayla on, and I think this is a fun chapter. This one might actually be more fun than the Bowl the Wind's use itself, even though that had so much more lead up to it.
Yeah, and having talked with Kayla at SpoilerCon, I'm looking forward to this conversation. She's gonna have fun with Big Bada Boom.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Okay. Shall I kill recording now?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon.